water from the tap, something the Cecil Hotel doesn't want you to see. Hotel resident Alvin Taylor helped us videotape it with a cell phone.
Yeah, smell of chlorine.
Chlorine. What the city is using to flush the hotel's entire water system after the gruesome discovery of a woman's body inside one of the rooftop tanks that may have been there for as long as 2.5 weeks. 4 tanks connect to the hotel's drinking supply, and during those weeks, hundreds of residents and hotel guests have been using it.
Really turns my stomach. That's why a lot of people have left and went to another hotel. Just the thought of it for so long.
The woman inside the tank, 21-year-old Elisa Lam. The tourist from Vancouver, Canada, arrived in Los Angeles on January 26th. Surveillance video shows her acting oddly inside the hotel elevator as if she's hiding from someone. But Katie Orphan says Lam didn't seem odd at all when they met.
She was very outgoing, very lively, very friendly.
Orphan is the manager of a bookstore around the corner from the hotel called The Last Bookstore, one of the last places Lam was seen by anyone as she bought records and presents for her parents and sister.
Talking about what book she was getting and whether or not what she was getting would be too heavy for her to carry around as she traveled or take home with her.
That was January 31st. The young woman planned to see more of California, say police. Her parents flew down to Los Angeles to plead for the city to help find their daughter. Outside the family's restaurant near Vancouver, a memorial for a young life lost too soon in an unforgettable manner.
It kind of feels like the beginning of a noir novel. Like this is the beginning of a Raymond Chandler story, and Philip Marlowe is going to figure out what happened. And unfortunately, this is real life.
Kyung, I mean, this story is awful. The testing of the hotel water is complete. What do the tests show?
Well, we spoke to the LA Department of Public Health, and they said that they look for 2 specific types of bacteria, and the tests came back negative. Now, you may be wondering, okay, how is this possible if a body is decomposing in one of those water tanks? Well, it's been quite cool here in Los Angeles over these last few weeks. That, in combination with the natural chlorine that is put into city water, it was enough to make the water safe to drink. As icky as it may seem, science says it's still safe enough.
In the California desert just north of Victorville, a gruesome discovery by a motorcycle rider. 2 shallow graves, inside 2 adults and 2 small children. After noticing human bones in the dirt, the rider calls the San Bernardino County Sheriff. The Sheriff's Department is stumped. Who is this family, and why would anyone murder them, including their 2 small children? And why bury them here in the middle of the California desert? An investigator with the coroner's office reaches out to the Justice Department, asking them to check their records for any missing family of 4. It isn't long before the Justice Department tells investigators here to look at the McStay family case. This is Joseph McStay, his wife Summer, and their 2 little boys, Gianni and Joseph Jr. Nearly 4 years ago, February 4th, 2010, they vanished from their home in Fallbrook, California, north of San Diego. 15 days after the McStays disappear, investigators enter their home for the first time. There are no signs of forced entry, and nothing seems to be missing, that is, except the McStay family. Inside, investigators find a puzzling scene. Bowls of popcorn in front of the television, eggs on the counter along with a banana. Outside, another surprise, the McStays' dogs tied up in the yard. Did the family leave on their own in a hurry, thinking they'd be back? Or was it something more sinister? Did someone they know and perhaps trust force them to leave?
Do you believe there's any possibility that that home and the scene inside that home was staged?
That's one theory, and of course we've looked at that. We don't see anything like that. We don't have any hard evidence to indicate that, but we keep that in the back of our minds.
Adding to the mystery, it appears the family had no plans to run away. Summer McStay was making plans for her sister to visit, and the couple had just spent $4,000 on brand new flooring in their home. Investigators don't find any unusual withdrawals or deposits in their bank accounts either. A neighbor's security camera catches the family's Isuzu trooper driving away from the McStay's home at 7:47 p.m. the night they disappeared. 4 days later, it is towed from the parking lot of a strip mall here at the San Ysidro border crossing, just about an hour's drive south of the family's home. The vehicle offers few clues. The only fingerprints on it match the McStays. So why park at the border? Had the family run off to Mexico? On surveillance video from the border crossing, investigators are shocked to find what appears to be a family of 4, matching the McStays' description, crossing into Mexico the very same day their vehicle was towed. That video is just another piece of the puzzle, another addition to this massive case file, which holds tips from Indiana to Burbank to Baja California. A waiter in Mexico says he served them dinner. A bartender is sure they ordered cocktails. Nothing checks out.
That's certainly part of this huge puzzle. What happened here? Was that part staged? Did they actually cross into Mexico? We still think that there's a strong possibility that they did. When did they come back? Were they under duress? I mean, these are all questions that we want to find out.
And now, after nearly 4 years, the answers may be closer than ever. Within days of finding the remains in the desert graves, they are identified as Joseph and Summer McStay and their 2 little boys. Investigators say they were murdered, but it's unclear how, nor do they know who killed them. Late today, Mike McStay came to see his brother's shallow grave for the first time.
You see how this is kind of sunken down?
Yeah.
It gives you a little cover from the road. Somebody had to know the area, had to know you needed a 4-wheel drive.
This man wrote a book about the McStay case. He's long doubted drug cartels are to blame.
Cartel hit doesn't work this way. The graves were only 2 feet deep. Joseph and Summer were in one grave, very shallow grave, only 50 feet off the main road. The cartel kills an entire family, they bury them, they'll never be found. So this was amateurish.
Mike McStay just wants to know who did it, and he wants them to pay.
You guys are cowards, and all of America's coming after you, and we're going to find you, and we are going to prosecute you, and I'm going to be there every step of the way, and I'm going to be there when you meet your fate.
Randy Kay joins me now from Victorville, California. So what are investigators now saying about the homicide investigation?
Well, Anderson, this case is now being handled by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. And the good news, if there is any in a horrible case like this, is that they do now have a crime scene. They have clues, they have evidence. They're going to be going through all of that. We don't know exactly what they found here in the desert, just a little ways behind me, but we know that there was a weapon involved. We don't know what it was. We know there was something that was buried in these shallow graves along with them. We're not getting any clarification on that yet either, but at least the sheriff has something to go on. I can tell you, though, that this Sheriff's Department is not going to be relying on that theory that this family ran away to Mexico. You saw that grainy footage of a family that matched the McStay's description crossing into Mexico. They are going to crack this case wide open, start from the beginning. They're going to talk to friends, family, business associates, anybody that they can. The last time they've been through this, they interviewed 300 people. They're going to go back through all of that, Anderson, again, and hopefully find some answers this time around.
Oh, it's been so long. It's incredible. Randy, appreciate the reporting. Thanks.
Some stunning new revelations about the mysterious death of a little girl that many people know, even though it was so long ago. John Benet Ramsey, the former Boulder, Colorado police chief who led the investigation into that 6-year-old beauty queen's death, has posted some pretty shocking insights about this still unsolved case, and he did so on the internet. John Benet's murder captured the nation's attention when her body was found in her family's home with a ransom note. That happened Christmas Day, 1996. Mark Beckner, who took over the case in September of '97, has given a lengthy interview on Reddit just earlier this week. And perhaps the biggest revelation is exactly how John Benet actually died. This is what Beckner wrote. We know from the evidence that she was hit in the head very hard with an unknown object, possibly a flashlight or similar type item. The blow knocked her into unconsciousness, which could have led someone to believe she was dead. The strangulation came 45 minutes to 2 hours after the head strike. That's based on the swelling of the brain. While the head wound would have eventually killed her, the strangulation actually did kill her. Now, Beckner also wrote about John Bonet's mother, Patsy Ramsey, and that strange behavior when it came to the ransom note and giving handwriting samples for analysis. But I want to stress that he was discussing his mindset during the investigation years ago, before the Ramsey family was actually cleared. And make no mistake, they have been cleared. DNA evidence did that in 2008. And it's hard to imagine this. John Bonet would turn 25 years old this August. In 2012, I sat down and I spoke with her father, John Ramsey, about the heartbreak of losing his child.
Do you think of her, when you think of her now, as that little girl? Is she frozen in time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's a 6-year-old little girl in my mind and always will be, I guess.
What do you think she'd be like today?
Well, I think she would be, she probably, I guess, would be out of college by now, and probably, you know, she was very smart.
And again, although they were under an umbrella of suspicion for a long time, they are clear. Let's be clear. I want to talk about these new developments with Joey Jackson and Mel Robbins. Mel, I was really distressed to see this information. Believe it or not, as a journalist, you want to know everything. But as a citizen, you want to know that police, when they have an unsolved case, hold things tight to their chest that maybe only the killer would know.
Yes, Ashley, you know, it was fascinating as a citizen to read all of these details. And like you, I was actually reassured to hear that they held back some details. I mean, I think about, for example, the Heather Graham case, where we have the serial killer or suspected serial killer behind bars, and there were many cases that they're trying to link him to. Now, in that case, if they had given out very specific details about unsolved cases, the danger is that the killer could be watching and could cover his or her tracks. And that's probably exactly why the police in this case held back some of those really amazing details that we just learned, Ashley.
So, Joey, 26 years ago, and this is obviously what you call a cold case. It is, you know, it's among the coldest of cases. But now with that new information, could it do the opposite? Could it spark people to come forward and jog their memories at least, and maybe give that one bit of information that ultimately does solve cold cases? Because we know it does happen.
You know, Ashley, my answer is yes. I think the media is the fourth estate for a reason. And I think when you have media scrutiny to it, it could spark anew, one, interest, and number two, just a general motivation by the police, not that they're not motivated now, but just to look at this case, look at it closely, and bring someone to justice. And so I'm one that believes, I know and I understand that it's nice to hold back the details that only a killer might know. Therefore, when you get someone, you could ensure that that's the person who did it. But with this new interview, I think you have renewed interest, and renewed interest brings renewed attention, which brings focus, which can hopefully bring justice. And so therefore, I think this is a good revelation and a good development to the case.
Do you think, Mel, and listen, I've never been in law enforcement and I don't know how they work, and I certainly, 26 years ago, it was somewhat different. We didn't have all the forensic tools, you know, perfectly refined that we like to think we do today. Is it possible they still have that critical evidence that no one knows about? Because listen, I've covered a case in which someone was exonerated who spent decades in prison because the guy came forward, the real killer came forward, and he was the only one that knew about the shape of the jewelry box that killed the person who was the deceased in the case. Do you think they still have that nugget?
You know, they might, but more importantly, if the killer is out there and alive, what we may have is a sense of guilt. I mean, what you also see are people that made false accusations come forward and exonerate people that are in jail. You also see people that are serving time, that are living with guilt, that maybe find religion later in life. And so not only could there be a piece of evidence that we don't know about, or a piece of forensics that they could test with technology that we don't even have yet, Ashley, but there could be somebody out there that's developed a conscience that comes forward based on these new revelations. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, last comment, Joey, just about when it is a cold case, and a freezing cold case at that.
Right.
How much, you know, dedication is there to it? How many people are working the case?
Well, you know, Ashley, you have to believe and you want to hope that the police are doing their job, cold case or not. But there are also practical considerations like memories that fade, like evidence certainly that deteriorates. And whenever you have that, it becomes problematic to actually solve the case. So let's just, you know, continue to hope for the best. And we understand and we know that the police will dedicate the resources, hopefully eventually, to putting this case to an end and bringing the killer to justice.
It's just
Well, Anderson, the Johnsons were hoping that this video would give them some answers. There was even a hashtag on Twitter, "Give us the tapes." But it appears that this video is only providing more questions and very few answers. We've got a couple of clips from these hours of video we've watched. Let's look at the first one, and it shows Kendrick walking in from the right side of your screen there. He's behind another student, and as soon as he runs out, you see that student disappears, and a couple of other students appear. It's from one image to the next with no explanation of how those students got to that position or where the student at that red shirt went. Now, we blurred their faces because they're minors in this video and the next. Let's go to the next one. You can see Kendrick at the bottom right of the screen. He's walking at first, and then he runs out of the frame, and just like the first video, other students just appear. No explanation of how they got to that point. You don't see them walk in. We've not edited these videos to just kind of put one image next to the other. This is how we receive them from the sheriff's office today.
So the video seems to be jumping around. You're saying those aren't edits? Is that, I mean, I assume it's a motion sensor camera. Is that the way it's supposed to work, that it may take a few seconds for an image to register?
That was our first question. When we see the images, especially of Kendrick with all these hours of video, it's like, well, what happened at the end of this and how did these students appear? Was this video edited? So we reached out to both the school that owns the cameras that recorded it and then the sheriff's office, which had a copy of it, which supplied it to us. I want to read you the statements. First, from the school district, an attorney for Lowndes County Schools says simply, what we produced to the sheriff is a raw feed with no edits. And then from the attorney for the sheriff's office, my client has confirmed that the video was not altered or edited by anyone within the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office. They both maintain that what we see is exactly what was recorded.
What about the corner where the gym mats are, or where Kendrick's body was ultimately found? I mean, that seems to be the key place. We've known there was a camera there. You saw the video from that camera today. What did you see?
Yeah, this is the most important camera of all 36, and I want to show you the video. It's blurry. Of all 36 cameras, a video that was provided, this angle is blurry. It's almost impossible to make out any of the faces. And if you look at the corner, it's the top left of the image. Those are the mats in which Kendrick Johnson was found. What you don't see is the top of the mats. And we know why that's important, because sheriff's deputies say that he climbed in through the top of the mat. They say that the students who found him were playing on top of those mats. And in this video, because you can't see that image, you can't see that. Also, you know, we saw from one image to the next in the other videos. From looking at this, we see students playing basketball, and then a few frames later, we see what appears to possibly be the nurse running in. Then we see someone running through with a gurney. So there is, we know from the file, of the investigative file, there are activities and there are events between these, but we just don't see them through what is the only blurry image, the blurry angle of all 36 cameras that were provided by the school district and the sheriff's office.
So I'm a little confused. I mean, we saw Kendrick running, and from one angle, the camera on the mat, does that show him approaching the mats at any time? And is there anybody else that shows up?
There is activity in the hours of video there, but it's so blurry and so much is happening in that corner. There are bleachers there, and students, we know from the file, would sit in that area. The police say that they would play in that area, but because we can't see the top of the mats from the image, we can't tell if anyone ever went on top and when they went on top. And we don't see Kendrick running in that direction. And if we were to see someone going in that direction, the image is so blurry. We have not edited this at all, the clarity of it, to tell if Kendrick is running in the direction of the mats.
The sun was perfect. The water on Falcon Lake, straddling the border between Texas and Mexico, was calm. September 30th, a Thursday. There'd be no crowds, and for Tiffany and David Hartley, no worries. Even being pulled over by the Texas State Patrol for an expired plate on their jet ski trailer didn't bother them. The couple was moving from the border of Mexico back home to Colorado and wanted to spend one last day on the lake. It was mid-morning. David picked up his cell phone and called his mom.
They were excited to go have one last big ride on their jet skis before they come back to Colorado.
Are you sure that your husband got shot? Yes, he was hit in his head.
Just hours after the carefree call to Colorado, a frantic Tiffany Hartley was calling 911, telling a story at first not everyone would believe.
When you're in shock, you don't even remember some stuff. In simple 911 call, you didn't even remember it.
She was telling the operator she and her husband were ambushed, attacked by Mexican pirates. Tiffany said she'd escaped racing on her jet ski, but her husband had not.
He was thrown off the jet ski and I couldn't pick him up to get him on mine.
Tiffany's account of what happened hasn't changed since that day, that she saw her husband get shot, that she jumped in the water herself to save him, and when she turned her husband's body toward her, saw the hole in his forehead. When I sat down with her, she was calm, sure that she had remembered every detail correctly.
I'm in the water. I'm with him. I have him in my hand and my jet ski in my other hand. And the boat came around to me. I could feel the boat coming around me and saw two guys, and one had a gun pointed right at me. They were about 10, 12 feet away from me.
Did you think this is it?
Mm-hmm. I told him, please don't shoot. Please don't.
Since that day, there has been no body, no jet ski, no sign of David Hartley or the three boats involved in the attack. And rumors persist that somehow, some way, the Hartleys themselves were involved.
I think it just hasn't hit me. It just seems like, how on earth did this happen? It just doesn't seem real. I mean, it just seems like it hasn't connected in my brain.
Everything she's telling me has happened before in the other events, the other cases.
One of those who does believe her, Zapata County Sheriff Ziggy Gonzalez.
We've had along the border murders, home invasions, burglaries, rapes, all types of crime where it's associated with what I call spillover violence.
Gonzalez says Falcon Lake has become a drug trafficking highway. There have been 4 reports of American fishermen running into Mexican pirates, and he says the fishermen were told to stay off the Mexican side of the lake and were sent on their way. The sheriff says Tiffany and David may have been mistaken for drug dealers or simply seen as easy robbery victims. But he says his hands are tied. But the head of a Mexican detective working the case, was delivered to the Army in October. Since then, Mexican authorities have offered little information about the status of their investigation. Back in Colorado, Tiffany Hartley waits, along with David's mother, for any news.
It was like Tiffany said, it still doesn't seem real. I'm still waiting for him to walk through that front door.
Have you come to grips with the fact that David's body may never be found? May not be in a condition to be found?
It's past my mind, but I'm not willing to accept it in my heart.
Finding David's body and the details that would corroborate her story is the only way Tiffany has to prove she is telling the truth. The body has been missing now for 3 months, and police say it's doubtful it will ever be found. Drew Griffin, CNN, LaSalle, Colorado.